Ugh. Oh, don't do that, man.
Today we're experimenting with yellow cake mix. If you caught my last video on the history of cake mixes, you know they've changed quite a bit over the years. And today we're putting that history to the test with a fun experiment. We're going to see how different variations of Pillsbury yellow cake mix performs in a head-to-head bake-off with UpMix. Now, as you may or may not know, Pillsbury cake mix boxes are 15.25 ounces, which is a bit lighter than they were, say, 15 or 20 years ago when they were 18 and a quarter. So I've been wondering, does that missing 3 ounces really make a difference in our cakes? And what happens if we try to adjust for it, back up to that 18.25 ounces using an UpMix recipe? Well, today we're going to find out. I've set up an experiment with 5 different cakes. Cake 1, the control using a current 15.25 ounce Pillsbury cake mix exactly as it comes. I chose Pillsbury as a middle of the road option. Duncan Hines still has some 18 and a quarter box mixes, and Betty Crocker, well, they've gone all the way down to 13.25, so I thought it was a fair compromise. Cake 2, the current cake plus an extra 3 ounces of UpMix to bring it back up to 18 and a quarter ounce weight. Cake 3, I'll remove 3 ounces of the cake mix using 12.25 and adding 6 ounces of UpMix. Now, I thought about doing 13.25 ounces so it was similar to a Betty Crocker mix, but I really wanted to see the effect of cake UpMix to the batter, and I wanted to increase that variable. Which brings me to my next cake, cake number 4, splitting it in half. 9.125 ounces of cake mix and 9.125 ounces of UpMix. Last but not least, cake number 5, I'm just going to take a regular 15.25 ounce box with leftover cake mix from another box, which is another option bakers are doing to get back to 18.25. Whew! We'll bake each cake and then evaluate them based on a bunch of characteristics like appearance, texture, taste, aroma, sweetness, how they make me feel inside, what TV shows they're watching. You get the idea. Let's get started. All right, it's later in the day and I got my cake eating clothes on. Before we jump into the results, let's talk a bit about how I set up this experiment. I wanted to make sure that each cake was prepared and baked under the same conditions to keep things as fair and consistent as possible. Let me go over the dry ingredients. I'm using the Pillsbury's 15.25 ounce yellow cake mix, and for the UpMix, I'm using the batch I made for my history of cake mix video, which the recipe is also in the description below. For wet ingredients, I used eggs from the same carton, although I can't say that they're from the same chicken, but anyway. A half a cup or 118 milliliters of neutral oil, and I'm using grapeseed here, and 1 cup or 237 milliliters of water, all of which are specified on the cake mix box. I did have to make one adjustment when adding more dry mix to get it to 18 and a quarter. In my last video, when I suggested adding more dry mix, someone really wanted to know how much more liquid, and after doing a little research, I read that you can safely add 1 to 2 tablespoons of water for every 3 ounces of dry ingredients. And to keep it consistent, I chose 2 tablespoons or 30 milliliters of extra water for the UpMix above 15.25. For the mixing, each cake batter was mixed for the exact same amount of time. I used a timer to mix each cake for 2 minutes on medium speed, stopping midway to scrape the sides. Even if I didn't think they needed it, I still did it for consistency. I used identical store-bought aluminum pans for all the cakes. This helps eliminate any variables that different pan materials or sizes might introduce. It also had a non-stick coating, so I forgoed the use of parchment paper or baking spray. All the cakes were baked in the same oven, preheated to the same temperature of 350 degrees Fahrenheit, but I monitored it because I have trust issues with my oven, and yes, I do have an oven thermometer. I just think the oven and I need couples counseling to regain that trust. Each cake was baked for the same amount of time. Now the box says 34 to 38 minutes, so I just picked 35, and to be honest, I was happy with the results. I checked each one with a skewer to make sure they were perfectly baked. My aim was to make the only differences between the cakes be the amounts of cake mix and UpMix used. Oh, I just want to let you know, not everything goes super smoothly. I just baked this cake and I accidentally added only 2 eggs, but look how beautiful it looks. So now we have a 6th cake to compare. Woo. All right, so I have 6 cakes to try out, and I've evaluated so far the color, and the height. Okay, so here I am evaluating the cakes, and I'm gonna jump in because I don't honestly think you wanna spend your time watching me eat a ton of cake for the next 7 minutes. Unless you do, in which case, let me know, and maybe I'll set up a Patreon or an OnlyFans for that kind of salacious behind the scenes content. Seriously though, I'm just gonna turn most of this footage into a cake eating montage, kind of like that artsy sequences in the later episodes of Better Call Saul, which by the way, I finally finished. Wow, what a series. Also, if you want to share what you've been watching, aside from my videos of course, hit me up in the comments. Anyway, all 6 cakes turned out great. Like I said in my last video, these cake mixes are practically foolproof. Even the one I messed up by only adding 2 eggs instead of 3 still turned out decent. They were all yellow inside, of course they are yellow cake mix. Most of them had a nice golden top, and their texture and crumb held up. Except for the 2-egg cake, which crumbled a bit as I broke it open, but you'd expect as much since eggs are such a great binder. Now the heights didn't vary as much as I thought, and most of the cakes domed in my oven. As you'll see in the final scores, the UpMix with the regular cake mix performed the best. One thing I noticed, these box cakes have a strong fragrance, but the more UpMix I used, the less fragrant they became, which is something I actually appreciated. In the end, if you're looking to stretch your cake mix into a full batch of muffins or just get a better yield, this method of using UpMix is totally worth it. Eating all these cakes got my head buzzing, but let me sum up what I learned. I'll post the final scores on the screen for a bit, but you can see with my scoring that cake number 2 and 3 did slightly better than the rest. And it's no surprise, but the 2-egg cake, cake number 6, didn't really hold up. My feeling is that if you pick something between 3 and 6 ounces of UpMix, you'll be great. The height in the 3 ounce of UpMix was one of the best, and most of them had great color and structure, but the height really sold it. What I really liked about cake number 2 is it wasn't as overwhelmingly sweet, and the aroma was slightly subdued. The main thing that knocked cake number 3 down was its lack of height, but it was a nice cake to eat, and it wasn't as sweet and overwhelming with the aroma, which is I think really important because these cakes can feel a little like too much sometimes. So what's the takeaway from all of this? Adding a small amount of UpMix to the current cake mix, as we did in cake 2, not only brings back the weight to the classic 18.25 ounces, but I think it also enhances the cake's flavor in a nicer, more delightful way. It maintained all the qualities we love about a good cake mix while offering a more balanced, slightly subtle flavor that doesn't really like overwhelm you or punch you in the face. For those of us who miss the old cake mixes, creating an UpMix might be the perfect solution because it's cheaper. It doesn't really mess with the magic that is in the cake books. If you like what you watch, please subscribe below. It really means a lot to me. Thanks to everyone who watched my history of cake mix. The video link is in the description below, and I will see you in the next one.
And then I'm gonna have to figure out what I'm gonna do with all this extra cake.